When I was first getting into board games, I made so many mistakes. I was buying games that weren't right for me, hosting disastrous game nights because I had no idea what I was doing. So today I'm going to share the top 10 mistakes that all new gamers make, and I've made all of these, so you can avoid making them yourself. The fastest way to ruin a game night is to not read the rules beforehand.
I thought I won't open it until they arrive, so we can go through it all together.
If it's your game, then it's on you to know how to teach it, not learn it yourself in front of everyone else.
You're not going to believe this. Some of us will have hidden roles.
Learning rules is one of the biggest reasons people hate board games. So if you've invited non-gamers, you are an ambassador for this hobby. You're an ambassador for the hobby right now. And we are all relying on you to represent us well. Because when your friend moves in next door to me and I ask them round for games and they say,
I don't play board games. I tried it once, but I just hate all the rules.
that will be your fault. And I'll be reporting you to Rodney Smith. If you don't know who that is, you've proven my point. It's like trying to get your children to eat vegetables. You've only got so many attempts before they swear them off forever. So you better saute those rules in butter, wrap them in serrano ham, and serve them with a jus, because I'm not about to lose another potential gamer to rock climbing. You can't do both. You have to pick a side. Some people watch Rodney Smith videos. Some people read rule books in bed. Some people watch Rodney Smith videos in bed, but I think that's for other reasons. It doesn't matter how you learn it, just learn it. The less time you fuss around with rules on game night, the more games you get to play. If you're new to board games, you might think that this number on the side of the box with a clock symbol next to it is the amount of time it takes to play that game. No, that is a number plucked from thin air. You'd be better off reading the barcode. In fact, it's so inaccurate that if you finish a game in the time stated on its box, you win a trip to the factory where they make all the board games and inherit it like in Willy Wonka. If you've got an hour before you need to drop your partner at the train station and you start a game that says it lasts an hour, you can kiss goodbye to kissing them goodbye. They will be halfway to Prestatyn by the time you're counting points. And for context, that is in Wales. Here's the formula for working out a game's real length. Start by multiplying the number on the box by 2, add 50% if you're playing it for the first time, and 20% per extra player, then times it all by 4 if any of those players get analysis paralysis. If all your friends get analysis paralysis, you might consider a different hobby.
I haven't got analysis paralysis. This is how long it should take anyone to scientifically compare all the options and pick the optimal one.
What you absolutely mustn't do is tell the internet that a game took you many hours to complete, because within seconds, you'll receive a reply like this.
Actually, my group can play Game of Thrones in under an hour.
Yes, Stuart, if no one goes to the toilet or talks or has fun, it's possible to finish any game within an hour. And if I take all the good bits out of my burger, I can eat it quicker. One of the silliest things to do as a new gamer is to buy expansions. You don't need them. No matter what some overzealous reviewer might tell you.
And I would rather waterboard myself than play the game without this expansion.
If you've played a game less than 30 times, you're still exploring it. And if you're bored of it already, I'll let you into a secret. You don't like that game. An expansion isn't going to fix that.
But John, this expansion provides more variety.
Yeah, but you know what provides more variety? A different game. We all have limited money to spend. If you don't, go to patreon.com/Actualol. So save it for something that will offer a completely different experience. That game might be even better. I own 300 board games, which is too many, by the way. But it's my job, so I grant myself special dispensation. I have 72 expansions because I was once like you. And of those, I would confidently say one is worth getting out of 72. This idea that you need an expansion is a marketing trick.
Huh, have you not got the expansion? Oh no, not yet. I did hear it makes it better. Try loads better.
When I was starting out, I would believe that hype and buy the expansion at the same time as the base game, which is such a mistake, because you're robbing yourself the journey of exploring that game. It's like telling your waiter to bring out your dessert and your main course at the same time. I've even started to get rid of expansions now for games I love because they're not worth the hassle. When my neighbours ask to borrow Carcassonne, I have to take out the expansion stuff every time so it doesn't confuse them.
Those are the custom tiles I had made. You'll probably want to ignore them. They use non-standard iconography that's actually easier to pass, but takes longer for the average person to grok. It's sort of like my Dvorak keyboard layout.
Treat it like marriage. Buy an expansion only if you love a game. If the thought of playing it trumps the thought of playing something new and different. But if you're the kind of person that's always got your eye on the next hot game, then you need to get it out of your system before you go bring in any little expansions into the world. We've all made this mistake, playing a game at a bad player count. If you have a box that says 2 to 8 players on it, you've been sold a lie. Yes, Magic Maze can theoretically play 2 to 8 players, and my body can theoretically run a marathon, but it won't be fun and I'm never going to do it. The trouble is, publishers know that a horse that rides 2 to 8 people will sell more, so they stick a horn on it and call it a unicorn. Then we wonder why it buckles under our weight. This game says 3 to 6 players on the box, but it actually means 5 to 6 players, unless you have an expansion. This game says 3 to 6 players, but I would only ever play it with 5. And these are all games which say they can be played at 2 players, but they really can't. Flexible games can end up being a jack of all counts, master of none. I'd much rather play a dedicated 2-player game like Watergate, Lost Cities, or Onitama, because no flexible game can replicate the push and pull feel that they have. But if you're on a budget, there are some unicorns out there like Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride, which are fun for 2, 3, 4, and 5 players. The trick is to look up a game on BoardGameGeek and check the recommended player count section. It's been voted on by users, people whose game nights died so yours don't have to.
Hello, Michael, have you left yet? Okay, good, because you can't come anymore. No, I checked the player count on BGG and it's only 4 players, so you're out. Yeah, but are you still free next Sunday for Game of Thrones? Because we need 5 for that.
I honestly do this every time I play a game for the first time. And if it doesn't fit the group size, then we'll play something else. We're here for a good time, not a long time. For game night, that is. But we will also die. I made this mistake so many times when I got into the hobby. Don't take the BoardGameGeek Top 100 as gospel. I was given my first board game for Christmas by my wife 10 years ago now. It was Ticket to Ride Europe, and I was disappointed. I thought I'd been given a bad game because it wasn't in the top 10 on BoardGameGeek. It wasn't even in the top 100.
No, it's not a bad gift. It's just there's 130 better gifts you could have got me if you'd done your research. That's why I sort by most popular on Amazon and gave you 50 Shades of Grey again.
It turned out that my wife knew me better than a website because I loved Ticket to Ride. And to rub it in, that same Christmas I received Puerto Rico, a game I'd specifically asked for because it was the number 2 game of all time on BoardGameGeek, and I hated it. But I also hated the number 2 film of all time on IMDb. Just like any art form, there are no objectively good games that everyone likes. You have to find what's good to you. And the top 100 is a fun reference point, but I only own 6 games from it, and they're not my favourites either. And actually, as a newbie, the BoardGameGeek Top 100 is a bad place to start, because it skews towards more complicated games, because the people voting on it are seasoned gamers.
You won't understand what's going on the first 10 times you play it, but after that, it really starts to get good, if you play it with the same group.
Gloomhaven is currently the number 1 game of all time on BoardGameGeek, and it is a huge, complicated commitment of a game. The people that love it, but if you're new to games, it is a mistake to start with Gloomhaven. And if you're watching this saying,
well, my first game was Gloomhaven and I didn't struggle at all,
then I give you this. A fanfare on the world's tiniest trumpet. Whereas Catan, Ticket to Ride, Pandemic, and Carcassonne, the games that got most people into board games, none of them are in the top 100. So don't obsess over it. If you're new to games and you want to know what games to get, first subscribe to this channel, then go watch my top 10 gateway games video. You could try other channels, but weirdly, when it comes to board game videos, mine are objectively the best. If you've been into board games for a year or two, I can say this with full confidence that it will apply to you. Stop buying so many games. Look, I know what it's like. All day, every day, you're thinking about them.
I love board games, me. I wish I was playing them right now.
James, could you mute your microphone? You're talking to yourself about board games again.
But you're only playing them once a week, if you're lucky.
I haven't played a game in weeks. It's miserable. Maybe, to cheer myself up, I should buy a new game?
Every Wednesday you check this week's new releases, and that game you've been waiting for is finally back in stock.
But this game's been out of print for as long as I can remember.
You've been into board games for 3 months?
Yeah, and it's been agony. If I don't buy it now, it could sell out and be another 3 months.
By then you'll be into another hobby.
Exactly. I'll never get to play it.
You'll buy a game that you don't even want that much just because someone's selling it half price on Facebook. You'll buy a game that you don't even have enough friends to play it with, but you just really love the sound of it. You'll buy a game on payday and on your birthday and on someone else's birthday. I've been there and done it all. I'm old enough to have seen all the games I feverishly overspent on come back into print many times. When we went on holiday to New York, I took an empty suitcase and I ordered 25 board games to arrive at our hotel so I could get them cheaper than in the UK. I spent more time planning which games I was going to fit in that suitcase than I did planning our trip.
This evening, since it's our last night in New York, I was thinking Chinatown? Yeah, and after we've played that, we should go for dinner.
And none of it was worth it. I don't have half of those games anymore. I get it, you've only just discovered this wonderland. You've got so much time to make up for. But it's okay. The beauty of board games is that you'll never get too old to play them. They're here for the rest of your life. In my experience, this phase doesn't last forever. I reached a turning point after a few years where I stopped hoarding and I started curating. Now, getting rid of a game, for me, feels just as good as getting a new one. I wish someone had told me this one when I was starting out. Don't rely on your family and friends to play games. If you're the one watching videos about board games, the chances are they're not as obsessed as you are, and they don't want to play as often as you.
It's nice playing a game at lunchtime, isn't it? Yeah, and it gives us time this evening to do other stuff. You mean other games?
I always found it so frustrating to have to wait weeks until my friends were free so that I could play something.
Are you still on for Pandemic Legacy tomorrow? Oh, yeah, the funeral. So sad. Just thinking, every wake I've ever been to's had tables at it. Yeah, you're right. I wasn't in the mood to do anything when Sonia Patel died. You know, the virologist. She got caught in that outbreak in Bogota.
The solution is to go to a local game group and find new people to play with. It's nerve-wracking and awkward at times, but I first went to one 7 years ago, and this is a photo of the friends I've made through that group. Now I can play games whenever I want to, and to fill in the time between meetups, try gaming online. It's not as good as playing in real life, but I found that the games I play against my patrons on BGA give me that daily hit that I crave. Or a healthier analogy that doesn't make me sound like I'm addicted. If you're new to board games, the last thing you should do is go on Kickstarter. It's like getting on a deadly motorcycle before you can even ride a bike. Kickstarter is a land of wonder, where all the prettiest board games sing their siren song, luring you in with the promise of miniatures and exclusive content. Then when you get in close, they kill you. Well, they take your money and make you wait ages to get your stuff, which is worse.
But if I don't back it now, I'll never get all the add-on boxes.
You'll never get them. I'm not seeing the downside. When you're new, there are so many good games for you to discover that are all available to have fun with right now. You shouldn't lock up your money in deferred gratification on a game that might not even be any good. Many Kickstarters are from inexperienced designers or publishers on a platform where you don't need to have designed a good game for it to sell because you can't play it before you buy it. This game uses a brand new mechanism called Hope. We've found from minimal playtesting that with Hope, even if the game is poorly designed, players will delude themselves into thinking they're having fun. Their biggest goal is to make an enticing box of goodies full of endless content and deluxe components. But those things don't make a game better. They just make it more expensive.
The miniatures come with a pre-painted metallic wash, and if you look at them closely enough, you can start to forget how bad the game is.
I say this from experience. Of the 54 games I've backed on Kickstarter, I've only kept 16 of them. And all that exclusive content I paid the FOMO tax for, I never touched it. I didn't get that far before realizing I hated the games. I'm not saying to resist Kickstarter forever. It's given life to some wonderful games, but the hit ratio is low. And if you wait until people have reviewed it, you're more likely to buy a game that's good. I have a friend with a shelf of flashy Kickstarters that turned out to be duds that he just can't sell because even though no game is objectively bad, some games are subjectively bad for the entire population of the world. This one's important. Don't make people play games they won't like. Let me tell you an embarrassing story. Back when I was relying on my friends to play games, I became obsessed with Game of Thrones, the board game, that takes 5 hours to play. I was so desperate to play it that to get the full 6 players, I invited 2 friends who have never played anything more complicated than a party game. They hadn't even watched the TV show. And when I invited them, I wasn't exactly honest about what they were letting themselves in for.
We're starting at 10 AM sharp. No reason. It's just nicer to play in the morning. And maybe bring a sleeping bag.
It was a disaster. They hated the game, and I felt terrible for putting them through it. So I didn't even get the fun time I was hoping for. Just a memory that makes me cringe whenever I think about it. And it's not just long games. I have friends who hate negotiation games, or how heated social deduction games can get. If you're a host, you wouldn't just serve the food that you're most excited to eat. It has to suit everyone. Because if they have a bad time, they might think twice about coming back. The most common mistake that new gamers make is to buy a game just because you like the film, TV show, or video game it's based on.
I love board games. I love D-Day. I'm certain to love D-Day Monopoly.
If we've learnt one thing today, it's that a board game box is a set of lies designed to sell you the game. And nowhere is this more true than when dealing with games based on an IP. It will look appealing. It will have your favourite characters on the cover, but that doesn't make it good. Remember, George R.R. Martin did not design this game. And thank God, because otherwise you'd never be able to finish it. In fact, it might suggest it's bad. They don't have to make a game good when they know it will sell itself. The lesson is, don't jump in. Do a quick search on Board Game Geek. If the rating is below 6.5, put the game down. You'll get as much joy from it as your Jon Snow Funko Pop. Thankfully, there are some great games being made from IPs, but even they can be a mistake for a new gamer. If you've spent 2.5 hours staring longingly at Timothée Chalamet, also known as watching Dune, then you go home and buy the game of the same name, you'll end up with a 4-hour game with a 24-page rulebook that was originally designed in the 70s. It's not a bad game, but I don't have to be your favourite character, Benny Gesserit, to predict that most fans of Dune will find it to be too much. The trick, as with so many of these mistakes, is to keep a healthy dose of skepticism and do your research, because the disappointment when you don't enjoy the big, exciting Star Wars game will be more than your 10-year-old heart can bear. Although by this point, it should be used to the disappointment. Those are my top 10 mistakes, but let me know the worst ones that you've ever made in the comments. And I put links to where you can find out more about the games that I mentioned in the description below, as well as places to buy them. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to see more videos like this. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching.